More than once or twice, I have heard fascinating stories about infidelity, but I never imagined that I would find myself in their situation. How it happened, and I still can't understand it. It seems that I earn quite decent. My wife has never needed anything. Well, stuff there, foreign holidays, and all that. Yes, in principle, an intimate life has always been at a high level. At least it seemed to me so before. The result is one. My wife walks, and my horns are already scratching the ceiling. Where did it all start? In my life, quite often there were random conversations or meetings that dramatically changed my whole life. It was to them that I owed my career advancement at work and helpful connections in non-work. Pretty much the same thing happened this time. I was strolling carefree through the city during my lunch break. I often do this to relieve my brain a little, and casually turned my head toward a nearby restaurant. What did I see there? Naturally my wife, and who with his ex-boyfriend. I almost lost the ground from under my feet, even in my eyes somehow clouded from the flood of emotions. After a few seconds, I pulled myself together, decided not to be too hot to wait until the evening and resolve the issue once and for all. I would certainly not let anyone make me horny. After a while, I got to my office and began to wait in a state of delirium for the end of the workday. In this short time, I more or less calmed my nerves, because there was going to be a fairly serious conversation had something to start it. But as a real act in this kind of cases, I simply did not know. Immediately accuse his wife of adultery. What if she just happened to meet her ex in a restaurant? Though what was she to do in that restaurant at the very other end of the city, 10 kilometers away from our house? There were a lot of questions, and it was necessary to find the best solution to find out the whole truth. The workday was finally over. I got into my car and drove slowly towards home, feverishly contemplating the whole situation. I did not even notice how I had come a long way. And now I was at home. I sat for a while and went to the door. From the threshold, my wife threw herself into my arms. She always did. I pulled away a little and calmly went into the kitchen, sat down at the dining room table, and asked my wife to make me coffee. This is my usual ritual after work at the office. She complied with my request as if nothing had happened. So I asked her how she had spent her day and what was new. My wife did not even flinch, calmly and directly to my eyes lied that she walked with friends to store and bought a couple of new blouses. Yes, right there I almost fell off the chair from this kind of insolence. So brazen to lie and not blush, it must be able to. And then the thought popped into my head. We must find incriminating evidence and then dump all the wife. So I decided to do that. The next morning, I stealthily went out and took the keys to her car. I opened it and put the hidden recorder in a secluded place. What? It would be quite an evidence base. Then I had breakfast with my wife and went to work as usual. 3 days passed in such a tense rhythm. As if by chance, the work piled up so much that I almost forgot about the incident with his wife. But here came the long-awaited weekend, and I finally decided to check the recorder. I practically shook my hands and started to watch it. As I suspected, my worst fears were confirmed. My wife was cheating on me, and how? In addition to the fact that she has constant appointments with his ex in the very car that I gave her for her birthday. So she was talking to his best friend, said that drunken flirted with 2 colleagues at the next corporate party. I was right there, almost collapse. It turns out that she was cheating on me almost constantly, and I am silly brainless, even did not notice. Well, now I had no doubts about my wife. I was faced with only one vital question. What to do with her now? There was no desire to live with her, to make her regret what she had done. I could do that. I decided to make a plan for further action. Now I'll make her dance. The next day, I took a day off work and went to a nearby small town where my wife's father lived. I would like to tell you a little about this man. He was a former colonel who had given almost his entire life to serving his country. These are not just empty words. This is a real man who gave his all for the good of the fatherland. I quite often crossed paths with him, and when I took care of his daughter, my future wife, and when I did an offer, and in general, we often went to him in the bath. I was a jerk to her. The colonel must have thought he gave his daughter in marriage a virgin, for he hardly ever let her go anywhere. School and home, that was all her entertainment. I guess that's why she went all out, going out with everyone else when she married me. So I decided to take my revenge from this very direction. I was well aware that if my wife's father found out what his beloved daughter had done, he would probably just wipe her out. Of course, I may be exaggerating, but if she had been around at the very moment I told him, he probably would have done the same. At first, the colonel staggered, and for a couple of minutes, I was even a little worried about his health, for his age could take its toll. But the soldier turned out to be a tough guy. He looked at me, poured himself a glass of vodka, and emptied it in one fell swoop. Then he did the same trick twice more, then silently stood up and staggered into the next room. That's when I realized it was time for me to retreat. The necessary information was delivered to the addressee, and the inevitable consequences were sure to follow, for my wife would have to go back when I drove her out of the family nest. Fortunately, we had not yet had children. I got in the car and calmly drove to the house. I want to reassure everyone right away. Nothing terrible or bloodthirsty happened to my wife. I got home, calmly gathered all the things of my now ex-wife, and with a chilling calmness put them out the door. I would like to note the important fact that my wife was watching all my actions. She did not even move. She understood everything from my cold stare. I did not make a grand scandal. I understood perfectly well that it was not me that was important to my wife, but the material values I could offer her. But now, in an instant, all that would be gone from her. After all, I, as a certified lawyer, had bothered to put a prenuptial agreement in place, and my wife would lose everything she had enjoyed so safely for the past few years. That is the real, and most importantly, cruel punishment for her. And lastly, a year later, I accidentally met a friend of my ex-girlfriend, and so casually inquired about her fate. She told me that her father kicked her out of the house and stopped all contact. Now she lives in a common-law marriage with some man on the outskirts of her hometown. They live very modestly, one might even say poorly. My ex-wife often posts on social networks that it was me who ruined her whole life and that I was such an asshole. I had been living with my wife for more than 20 years. We celebrated our anniversary 6 months ago. For this celebration, our 21-year-old daughter, who had recently married, gave us a new modern TV set. I can't call our family rich, but we always had enough money. I earned good money, and my wife, being a journalist by profession, sometimes travels to other cities, on business trips, thanks to which brings the family a good one-time income. Of course, I wish she did not work at all, but she loves to write articles and communicate with new people that she does not want to give up her occupation. By the way, the initiator of her employment at the last place of work was me, since the management position in the magazine where my wife now works is my longtime and close friend. In general, I was happy until a certain point in time. One evening, I do not remember exactly a month or two ago, my wife told me that she was going to a nearby town to interview some rock star who was coming to give a concert. I was a little upset because I wanted to spend the next evening with her alone, but my wife was so excited to share with me plans for the upcoming trip that I just smiled and kissed my sweetheart. I wished her success and a good trip. 3 days later, she returned. There was something strange about her behavior. I wondered several times whether she was all right, whether she had been able to carry out her plans. And anyway, how was that interview going? To all my questions, she smiled at me in a confused way and said that my questions were exhausted, but something kept bugging me inside like a cat creaking. And, as it turned out, for a reason. Soon I got a call from an old friend, the same one who had helped get my wife a job, and invited me to the bar. I said yes. The last time I had met him for a drink was quite some time ago. At the appointed time in the contract on the spot, we met and talked about something casually. But it got worse from there. After offering me a drink or two, my friend began a monologue with the words, "Buddy, I have something to tell you. Just promise to control yourself." I was wary, but nodded. Igor told me something that I could not think of in my worst nightmare. During my last business trip, my wife had cheated on me. After getting drunk during an interview with a rock star, the culprit mentioned it. My friend got the video out of the dressing room. I wish I hadn't seen the tape. There was no limit to my rage, resentment, and anger. When I got home, my wife, of course, noticed my condition. She realized everything and almost on her knees began to apologize to me and make excuses. I was very hurt. How to forgive such a thing? And before we were so happy, I said nothing back to her pleas for forgiveness. I just walked out of the apartment in silence. I went to my daughter's house to sleep that day. She and her husband had 2 rooms, so I didn't make them uncomfortable. I spent the next 24 hours as if I were delirious. I don't remember how I filled out reports at work, how I got to her, and how I got back. I arrived at my house late. My whole family was already waiting for me there, my daughter and son. They expressed their opinions about the mother's sincerity and remorse. The cheater added that she would quit her job and vowed to prove to me that she was madly sorry for her mistake and could not forgive herself. She begged me not to get a divorce. I listened to them in silence. And I was even glad that my children had the wisdom not to lose the warm feeling they had for me as a father and for the guilty one as a mother. But I cannot forgive my wife. I keep seeing the image from that unfortunate video. I realize that I will never be able to lie in the same bed with my wife again. So that was the story of our hero. Also, you can send me your unique life stories and I will tell them. And to you, as always, I wish you a wonderful mood and all the best. Thank you for watching.